Even thinking about a life without fear felt thrilling. I thought about Sal, one of my housemates in Darlinghurst, who I had envied desperately when we lived together. She was so relaxed and unfazed by life, happily meandering through her days with incredible ease. We all joked that she was so laid back it was a wonder she was standing. Sal didn't spend her every waking moment fretting, and nothing disastrous eventuated because of it. On the contrary, it seemed a terrifically enjoyable way of life. But at the time, me being more like her seemed wholly inconceivable. But it was something I thought about often. Sal and I had started living together at the same time that I had started full-time work, which was around the time I had begun quite actively expecting a change in myself. I'd finished 5.5 years of university and had quietly assumed that the weight I had grown accustomed to lugging around on my shoulders throughout my years of study would lift. I had finally graduated and got a good job. All that was left was to go to work and get on with my life. But the load didn't budge. It was as heavy as ever. I began wondering if anything I achieved would ever be good enough, and the answer that kept cropping up was no. I didn't know there was a name for that paradigm at the time, but I had an inkling that something in my way of living was a little awry. Enlightenment came in a workshop on perfectionism run by Victoria, a psychologist I'd come to know through the group therapy sessions she ran. We are going to explore perfectionism today, and before we begin, I want to get a sense from you about how it might be impacting each of you, she said to kick things off. There were 8 of us sitting at a group of desks, representatives from both the Jacaranda and the Jasmine wards, and she was standing up the front. We could have been at a uni tutorial. Put your hand up if you've ever felt like nothing you do is good enough, Victoria asked. I practically snorted, inadvertently, as I shot up my hand. Several other hands went up too. Victoria looked at me with a smile. Georgie, my question obviously struck something in you. When can you remember feeling that way? My whole life. I have literally never not felt that way. A man in his 40s laughed. Me too, he said. That's not an unusual response in here, Victoria said. Perfectionism is a pervasive risk factor for depression and anxiety, so it's an issue for many patients. Clinical perfectionism, she explained, is described as relentlessly striving for high achievement and unfairly judging yourself when those goals can't be met. For perfectionists, she went on, life is an endless report card, and anything less than an A+ is a failure. And the trouble is, no one ever gets an A+ for everything, and life isn't a subject at school. Failure in some form or another is inevitable. But for perfectionists, falling short, even in little ways, can feel catastrophic. To say I related is an understatement. I had always thought I'm a perfectionist was a humble brag, shorthand for I have impeccably high standards. I work hard. I pursue excellence. Why else was it relied upon so often in response to that age-old interview question, what are your weaknesses? In recruitment, I had learned, framing a penchant for details and excellent results as a flaw ticked a few boxes. It lets you recognise your own shortcomings while leaving the impression you were driven and focused. Personally, I used it on several occasions, and while it might have helped me land a few jobs, in rehab I learned the joke was on me. Perfectionism was my paradigm. One of the reasons perfectionism is toxic is because ultimately it's about seeking the approval of others, Victoria said. It's about measuring up. But perfectionists rarely concede that they do measure up. The penny dropped. Being perfect was the armour I sought out to protect myself from falling short. I was living at the mercy of what I imagined other people thought, and not because I was particularly invested in the views of any person in particular. I was terrified of being judged by anyone about anything. When Victoria asked us to reflect on a time where we could recall perfectionism impacting us, my mind immediately turned to what I had always found a strange source of angst for me: casual Fridays at the law firm. Monday through Thursday, I rarely gave much thought to what I wore, thanks to the rigid corporate dress code. On Fridays, however, we were free to mix it up within the bounds of smart casual in a professional setting. And every Friday morning, that vague description would send me into a spiral. I would pull out item after item in a mad attempt to find some combination that would satisfy all the criteria.